Hi there, and welcome to the Reinvent Your Reality podcast. My name is Jen Palko. So happy you could join me here today for episode 19. This is the end of season 2 of this podcast. I'm so happy you could be here for my end of year review. That's right, we're going to do an end of year review 2021. And man, what can you say? What can you say? I feel like you say the same thing every year. It was 2020, now it's 2021, now we're going into 2022. It seems so futuristic, doesn't it? But anyway, we're going to give you some tidbits. I'm going to give you my top 10 things that I think, lessons that we've learned throughout this year. This has been an interesting year. Nobody can deny that this has been one hell of a year, and we could say the same about 2020, and we'll probably get more of the same next year. I don't know what to expect, but hey, we just got to kind of roll with the punches and go with it. So, it's been a tough year for a lot of people with the pandemic, with just all kinds of changes happening in their lives, being isolated away from other people, not being able to travel and go places or even go see friends and family. And people have COVID fatigue, obviously, just fatigue in general. I mean, we're not designed to be under states of such stress for long periods of time. It takes a toll on our bodies, and for everybody it's different, right? So for some people, maybe they didn't mind the isolation. Other people, it drives them nuts because some people need other people and other people don't need other people quite as much. But I want to say that 2021, I think, was a very transformative year, if I'm saying that right, transformative year. And, on the surface, it appeared to be a really effed up year. Nobody's denying that. Things are crazy. Things are all over the place. But I think underneath that layer of craziness, there was these massive amounts of transformations that happen not only in society, even though it may not look like it, but on a personal level. For a lot of people spent the past year really going through some stuff. I know I went through some stuff and changes of like priority and what's important in my life and what's not important, and these lessons, learning along the way and letting go of stuff, and basically coming to this point of simplification. And I know that might be hard to grasp because it seems like everything's complex and everybody's confused and nobody knows really what's going on. But at the same time, there's this underlying simplicity to it all that we're trying to get back to. And I think we're at the point right now where it's like we're trying to hold on to things from our past or the way things were, and trying to normalize stuff that can't necessarily be normalized. So I think it's a lesson in adaptability right now, where a lot of us feel threatened by adapting, by changing, and it's going against the grain of nature and stuff like that. So anyway, I'm going to get into my top 10, but just an overview. I think it's been a very not only rough year, but a transformative year. So I'm going to put the positive spin on it, okay? Because a lot of people are looking at the past year as a very negative thing. Like, we're always hoping and praying that things will be better next year. But you know what? Then the next year is going to come and we're going to be doing the same thing. We're going to be hoping and praying and hoping that things get better. So we're focusing, so much on the negative stuff, and for good reason this year, because it's been different. We'll put it that way. It's been different. So, number one, I wanted to mention 2021 has been a huge test for the I in all of us. The I. Not EYE, but I. Okay? We've seen the I come out in a lot of people. And we could say I is the ego, right? It's the ego's need to protect in all aspects of life. So we have really, really seen through all the complexities our basic human nature, our basic survival mechanism come into play here. okay? It's because we're all trying to maintain this status quo. And at the same time, we have a misplaced sense of self. So the I can come out through pride and ego and boasting and trying to protect our people and division and all kinds of stuff. But we've seen it come out more than ever this year. And I think it's a lesson for us to take, not to fight against I versus you, but to really take a microscope to it, or a magnifying glass. Either one will work. And discover parts about ourselves that the ugly parts that, would have never come out had this past 2 years not have happened. Because we're so used to just things being normalized and the superficial, everything looks glossy and good and on the superficial coating of everything. As an example, I watched the movie Don't Look Up last night. I loved it. I wasn't sure going in. This is the movie that's on Netflix currently playing with Leonardo DiCaprio, Meryl Streep, who was great in it. Who else? Jennifer Lawrence, Cate Blanchett. A lot of big name actors and actresses in this movie. And I wasn't sure. First of all, I wasn't sure because it was a really long movie. It was almost 2.5 hours long. And it's, if you are not familiar with it, it's called Don't Look Up. You can look it up. It's on Netflix right now. And it's basically a satire of our whole society right now and how, how things are playing out and how greed and money and all kinds of stuff, misinformation comes out. But really, really excellent movie. I loved it. I don't know if everybody loved it. Everybody will have their opinion. I'm sure some people think it's horrible, but I really found it. It was funny, but at the same time, it was a little frightening because it was very true to our nature. And I think Adam McKay did an excellent job in portraying this, in picking out different pieces of how things, how we would respond to things as humankind and making light of it in the film itself. But there being this underlying kind of, not gloomy, but like a very, very clear message behind it all. So check it out, okay? If you haven't, check it out. But I just wanted to make mention of that because it really hit a nerve in the message and the I and the ego and American pride or human pride that's coming out through everybody. And this was a lesson in really learning this year and seeing the good, the bad, the ugly, the evil, the everything, all around aspects of the self. Okay, so not just the positive aspects, but also all the shadows coming out through this thing called an ego, which is how we identify ourselves, as this separate being as we're living on Earth. Okay, and number 2, we've seen that passive division. We know the country is divided per se, right? But we've also seen the past year that passive division can be just as gruesome as actively dividing through, actively dividing, I mean like really obvious external projection onto other people. But this passive division, it's kind of like these negative undertones, and I've seen this a lot in the spiritual community in particular, negative undertones disguised as enlightenment. So, folks, it goes both ways. It goes both ways. So you can spew out hatred towards one group, right? Towards people who maybe you don't think are as smart as you. And again, this is the ego and the the entitlement coming out through people. But the other way around, what I have seen are boasting, promoting unity and elevated consciousness. I can never say that right. Yet calling other people sheep for taking the jab or this or that. Very divided black and white kind of thinking. And it's the same thing, just different people, actors, different scenarios, but the underlying, it's the same thing. It's still that I coming out, okay? So passive division, it can be more subtle, but it can definitely wreak havoc on society. So it goes both ways. And I like to promote the gray. Gray is not my favorite color. I like black, personally. I like the dark colors, the dark shades. But, we've become in such a place where nobody likes gray. We think we have to choose sides all the time, right? Black, white, jab, no jab, mask, no mask. And by the way, I don't want to make this whole podcast about COVID, but it seems to be the theme this year. Everybody's talking about it. So if I didn't bring it up, then I wouldn't be, being realistic here. But I just want to say that we've seen the past year more of this passive division disguised as enlightenment or something like that. Okay. So that's been an important thing to take note of, because I think it's something that that has become really, with social media, it's become more and more prominent. So anyway, number 3, humans by nature, we learn that we can't miss out on certain trends, and we like to be included. So that's exactly what I'm talking about. COVID and vaccines and things like that, because it's the trendy topic. It's what everybody wants to talk about. Okay. So we've seen that we can't not talk about things, because just as humans, we want to feel included, right? We want to feel validated. It's like social media can be a very invalidating experience for people, because they think that they're going on to get the acknowledgement, and if they don't get it, or I don't know, it creates the know you're stupid syndrome in people. Again, a lot about division. So yeah, we want to feel included. It's just by our very human nature that we need to feel needed. Okay. So now that I've been talking about, more on the negative side of 2021, for a lot of people, it's been, like I said, it hasn't been the most positive year. But I want to bring some light to this, okay? 2021 was horrible for some people, but it was also a blessing in disguise for others. It's all about perception at the end of the day, okay? For some people, the pandemic really wreaked havoc on them, and they were in states of fear and anger and projection. For other people, though, it was time to either self-reflect, heal their wounds maybe, or some focus still primarily on moving forward towards their goals, untapped potential. And in a way, it was a blessing in disguise, like I said, where it gave them the opportunity to maybe leave a job that they didn't like. It gave clarity to themselves and all kinds of stuff. So here's a quote by Lonnie Jarrett, who's a practitioner, Chinese medicine. I'm reading his new book right now, Deepening Perspectives. Is really good. But I just wanted to bring up this quote. The mind can't let go of itself. Only we can let go of the mind. I thought that was a really good quote, because it really boils down to, the past year really boils down to our own perception and how we choose to see the past year. If we choose to see it as just a negative experience, if we choose to see just that top layer of what's going on, yeah, there's a pandemic happening. Yeah, there's a lot of people fighting. Yeah, there's a lot of anger. There's a lot of, violence, all kinds of stuff. We can choose to see only that, but then we could take it another level and we can, break open that top layer. It's almost like the outer shell, right? And underneath it, we'd see that there's actually some positive things under it. I know it doesn't seem like it, but there's lessons to be learned. We know that history repeats itself, right? And I know it's trendy to cancel history right now, and that's debatable. That's, again, about perception, and everybody is entitled to their own opinion here. But we will see that what happens on that outer shell, the layer, it's all the same, But it's different scenarios. Again, it's different actors, it's different actresses, it's different scene, different movie. But it's like the same script that keeps repeating over time, over and over again. So it's not until we crack open that shell and we go inside and we get to the deeper parts of what is the message here? What is the lesson that we're learning or that we should be learning from all this stuff? It's not just about fighting with each other. It's not just about, whether climate change exists or doesn't exist. It's going a level deeper into that. And this is where spirituality comes in and really finding clarity on yourself and not just being sucked in by these energetic pendulums that'll suck you into, the news and media and what your mother's telling you. It's going deeper than that, okay, into those layers. If you want to choose, you can focus. If you want to, you can choose to focus only on that external layer, the shell, or you could see what's underneath it, right? It's like these multiple simultaneous timelines happening. And we're constantly flipping timelines in life. It's almost like these different highways that are all going in the same direction. They're kind of like stacked on each other, layered upon each other. And we keep kind of switching lanes, switching highways, whatever you want to call it, constantly. And we're not aware of it. It's just subconsciously we do it. But what if we could consciously kind of choose which one we want to be on? I'm going to take the high road instead of the low road, right? That's what I'm talking about here. So we're constantly, faced with how we want to respond to the world, because we always have a relationship with the world, right? We have a relationship with people in the world, the actors and actors, actresses, and we always have a choice how we want to respond. But if we're totally unaware, then we're just going to keep flipping, or we're going to stay in a lower state and things like that, and we're totally unaware. We just have no clue, But if we can consciously choose, then it's going to be a little more beneficial for us. Okay. On to number 5. 2021 was a much needed slap in the face. Because what it did, it started the healing process for us. Okay, it's essentially karma at play. So again, this ties back into the patterns that keep repeating themselves over and over, just different scenarios, right? So believe it or not, there's lessons to each year. And I think the lesson for 2021 was about adaptability. It was about sustainability. It was about patience. It was about trust. And it was about, the realization that we still don't know everything. That we should let go of the pride or let go of always trying to be right. And realize that we don't know everything. It's like a moving target, right? The pandemic was a moving target. 2021 was a moving target. Things are always moving and evolving. So you can't really say that this is right and that is wrong, because it's going to change 2 seconds from now. Tomorrow, it's going to change. It's always going to change. And then you're going to have to kind of refocus, recalibrate. Okay? So it was definitely a test in adaptability, our ability to sustain change, sustain high states of stress on our body. For a lot of us, it was hard, right? So, that's that. Number 6. A lot of people this year took social media sabbaticals. Digital detoxes were very, very popular this year. More popular than 2020, I think. And this is actually a sign of our growth. Again, you could look at the superficial layer and you could say, all right, people are just tired of the fighting. But you know what? When you get tired at being angry, tired of fighting, that in itself is a huge, huge, huge step of growth within you. It's like your body saying, I can't do this anymore, right? In the past, maybe in the beginning, you'd get pleasure out of like trying to be right. Again, it's this ego thing, right? Trying to, I don't know, just get pleasure out of being angry and projecting at somebody. But now we're taking social media sabbaticals to self-reflect. So when we move from projection to self-reflection, after all, it's winter, water element, 'tis the season for self-reflection. That shows something within us that is huge. And that's why I'm saying this year was transformative for a lot of people, because just that tiredness, it's not just your body being fatigued, it's your spirit being fatigued. Because it knows that something is mismatched. It doesn't feel good anymore. That's a sure sign that you're growing. Okay? The realization and coming to realize that is huge as well. Yeah. So think about it, right? A little bit of perspective for you. Another thing, number 7, this year, and let me just say, this podcast, I'm not talking about pop culture because I think that's boring. Like what's trendy and what, I don't know, like stuff they predict last year into this year, like what, I don't know, you're going to wear your pants up high or low or skinny jeans, or like what's going to be the new trend. I find that stuff so stupid. I mean, I don't know, some of it could be funny, but I think it's very, again, superficial. So I'm talking from a more philosophical standpoint. So if it's a little ambiguous or it's a little, I don't know, in the gray, I apologize for that. So if you jumped on this podcast and we're expecting something more, what celebrities are going to be popular, what music, I'm sorry. I didn't mean for it to be like this. And between you and I, and it's not you, it's me. It's okay. But anyway, number 7, showing more of our flaws was popular this year, right? Especially on social media, people are getting more vulnerable. And you know what that is? People are tired of the glossiness, like the pop culture that I just talked about, and they want real. They want real. And not everything is real, like really real, as we talk about, but at least we're moving in the direction where people are getting more comfortable wanting real. Relatability. People want real because it's like a fresh cup of tea on a cold winter day when it's snowing outside. So this was a yin metal year. I remember my mentor, Lillian Bridges, who now passed, God bless her, but she did a end of the year, beginning of the year forecast, Chinese astrology forecast, last year. And she was talking about how it's a yin metal year, how this year is going to be more about that self-reflection, more like we don't have the energy, or nature's not backing us up to really like go plow through and really like have that fire beneath us. It's more about like taking time for clarity and taking time for ourselves and slowing down. And I think that's exactly on point, because I've felt that in myself, where it's like I want to do things, but I just like can't in a certain way. And I'm sure a lot of people can relate to this as well, that this year it's been transformative in that it has been about reflecting, clarity, just being around those we love, and not about like go out and, I don't know, burst through and do and hard work and struggle and labor. And I mean, you still have that always, but underlying like the energy of it all, I think has been more on the slower paced side. And we'll see it probably pick up next year going into 2022. Because again, this year has been about really, really finding our ground in a sense, right? And that leads me to number 8, that, a lot of people, what makes this past year, transformatives, a lot of people were searching for more meaning and purpose and clarity. And I think it started out, or, for a good part of the year, there was a lot of confusion. I mean, the confusion with the pandemic and what do we do? And do we take this? Do we take that? Do we do this? Do we do that? Lots of confusion. But I think there's also this internal confusion with people because of the external reality as well, where people were like, all right, I lost my job. Now what do I do? Right? Or, I want to focus on this in my life or family in my life rather than, the whole working from home remote stuff. It's like, okay, now I can find this balance that I've been missing out on because I haven't had the time to really think about it that much. So it was a time of thinking and really looking for the deeper, like, what really matters to me in my life? What really matters? Is it really about, my claim to fame, or like striving for more and more and more and more, or accumulating stuff? Or is it more about letting go of like stuff, right? Letting go and simplifying again. So I think the underlying theme of this year really was simplify life. Simplify. And at the same time, it had people in a pickle, yes, I just said that, in a bind, because the ego is always going to be searching. It's like your phone is searching for a signal, right? And when you start letting go of stuff and you start letting go of your attachments to things and labels and brands and who you think you are, because you've picked up all these labels along the way of how you identify yourself. But once you start kind of finding that clarity within about what really matters to you and simplifying things, then you start shedding some of those layers and labels. And that's why it can be a year of confusion, because it kind of throws you for a loop in a weird, twisted kind of way. And you think that you are going crazy or that life is falling apart, but really it's your ego trying to attach. It's your ego trying to search for a signal because it wants to maintain the status quo. It's like why we're freaking out right now with pandemic. People want to maintain the status quo. It feels really uncomfortable not to. We want it attached to things to try to normalize our lives as much as possible because it's protecting us. We want to feel safe again. When things are the unknown, when things are exposed, when things are just all over the place, we don't feel safe. We feel like we just jumped off a building and we don't know if we're going to land on a trampoline, we're going to land on a fluffy cloud, or if we're going to hit the floor, hit the ground. We don't know. So that's why it's scary, but it's and it also has people finding themselves feeling a little bored. Not just tired, but bored. So when we start shedding some layers and finding clarity within ourselves, we may feel boring. We may feel like a boring old adult because we're like, I don't feel important anymore. I don't feel validated anymore. So that's a good thing, actually, because it's stuff just coming to the surface, and it's normal for us to feel that way. But in the end, it works out where we keep kind of taking off more layers and simplifying and simplifying and simplifying, and eventually getting a place of acceptance where we can accept the simplicity of life and not be so attached to stuff and accumulations and labels and things that we've picked up along the way, because all those things are not truly us. We think they're us, but they're not truly us. Anyway, sorry if that was deep. So which leads me to number 9. So as we may have let go of layers of ourselves this year, or finding more clarity in our lives of what's actually important versus what's not important, or what we thought was important, and we're freaking out because we keep changing our mind and we feel indecisive, and that's okay because it's completely normal. I know I went through a period of like really bad indecisiveness a while ago, and I was driving myself nuts. Acupuncture helped a little bit because indecisiveness is a gallbladder imbalance in the body in Chinese medicine, and which has to do with the wood element. So that can be part of it too, where you feel stuck, like you can't make any type of decision. But we're usually stuck for a reason, and it's usually a turning point. It's like our body we're like done maybe with a chapter in our lives, or we're ready to take the next step. We just don't know where to go, or it could be fear-based. It could be a number of things. But usually when we feel stuck, it's like this critical transition period in our lives that we're going through. And we just have to learn to ease up on our trying to force to make things happen, or force ourselves to know the next step necessarily. And again, as we go into water, going with the flow of life, and it's not always easy. But number 9, it leads me to letting go of people, places, and things. People, friendships that maybe we've had for a long time. Suddenly we realize, like, this person's toxic. This person's an energy vampire. I have to limit how much time I can spend with, this person in my family or this relative. Setting boundaries. Metal element is about setting boundaries. It has to do with the lungs, okay? The lungs. We need to protect ourselves. Our Wei Qi, which is our protective Qi in our body. So being that it's a yin metal year, this year was about setting boundaries with people, letting go maybe of friendships we've had a long time. And we realize, okay, this person's toxic to my self-growth, to my inner peace, my own clarity, my own purpose in my life. So again, this self-reflection thing, it's about no longer feeling obligated to hang out with people, or obligated to, do this with this person, say yes all the time. Learn how to say no more often. No, I'm going to stay home in my pajamas and binge on Netflix. And that is that. Yes. So, that was number 9. Number 10. Number 10. What did I put for number 10? Number 10. Oh, so another transformative thing about this year, I think, was creativity. People tapping into their creativity. And some of this was due to the fact that some people were not working, or their jobs were put on hold, or maybe they lost their jobs. So this was an opportunity to do creative projects or do things that they never had time to do. But there was this underlying, like, I need to create more. It's this balance in the body. It's like this calling for us to step outside of our normal 9-to-5 or boring fuddy-duddy places and do something different, like from a different state of mind, get more in a flow state, do things that light us up more instead of just going through the motions. So I think 2021 was about dancing to our own rhythm for a lot of people. Not for all, but for a lot of people. And I think that's important because, if we don't dance to our own rhythm, what are we going to do? We're going to dance to other people's rhythm. And maybe our rhythm doesn't match up to that person's rhythm or the world's rhythm. So dancing to our own rhythm, slowing down instead of this constant fast-paced stuff and blah, blah, blah. And it was about compassion, learning compassion. And I think right now we are still at a point where we're trying to learn, but there has been a shift, especially the latter part of the year. And this has to do with what I mentioned, the social media detoxes, with people just being tired of like fighting and trolling and stuff like that. Like, this is a test in compassion, and I think we're going to get there. So there's 5 virtues that are housed in us since birth. And they are associated with each of the one of the organ systems in our body from a TCM perspective. So number 1 is order. That has to do with the heart. Number 2 is trust. Has to do with the spleen. Number 3, integrity. Has to do with the lungs. Number 4, wisdom, which is a good one, which has to do with the kidneys. And number 5, compassion, which has to do with the liver. And the liver, again, is associated with this wood element. And the wood element has been big out of balance the past year, because the emotion associated with wood is anger and irritability and frustration, and this yang push energy. And we live in a very yang society, right? Doing, going, like always on the move, pushing, struggling, winning, competing. That's the energy of wood. But the virtue of a balanced wood is compassion. So we are slowly but surely moving from a place of anger, which is wood out of balance. Now, anger is not a bad thing. Anger, fear, worry, none of these are bad. We label good, bad emotions, but emotions are just emotions. We have to feel through an emotion. But when we sit and we wade and we go swimming for hours and months and years with an emotion, if we sit in anger for so long, that's when we get out of balance. That's when disease starts in our body. So the next step is to move from this. We have the anger, right? Wood out of balance. We have the anger, the protesting, the boasting, the projection that's happening right now. Moving slowly but surely to a place of compassion. So that's what's next. That's what's coming. And I hope that we can get there sooner rather than later. But it's up to us individually to recognize when we're sitting in these states of anger or fear for longer than is necessary in our bodies. Okay? Compassion is the next step. Human compassion. So anyway, it's been a year. It's been a year, and we're going to watch that ball drop. And it's funny to me because I feel like at the end of each year, we always, again, it's this wood energy, like we always rose to victory because we conquered the year. We got through it. It's like every year we feel like it's a struggle, and like we just came out of battle with battle wounds, war wounds, right? And we're like, oh, whew, I got out of 2021. Let's hope for 2022. But you know what? If we keep viewing it that way, then every year is going to be like this battle of struggle and strife. And so again, it's moving to this place of compassion. Get out of this place of like tense, anger, constrained, like, you know, and part of that is the black and white and getting back into this area of gray. Like I'm wearing gray right now just to honor the gray. We can be compassionate and be, passionate. We can be spiritual and we can get a vaccine if we want to. God forbid. It's like this middle road. We always think like my side, your side, right? Republican, Democrat, like, Western, Eastern medicine, vax, no vax, like, why can't we just meet in the middle? Why can't we just meet in the middle, right? So that is what I think next year is going to be about. Us getting to a place where we understand and we realize that the gray is a good place to be in. It's a good place to be in. Integration, not science versus spirituality. It's integrating everything in, and that is going to really burst our bubbles with joy, because it just makes us more well-rounded. individuals. Just have, again, understanding, compassion for other people is going to be great. So let's stop viewing the past year as like struggle and strife and, oh, we got through it. And, and start like shifting the perspective a little bit. Like, was it, I mean, yeah, it had its moments, but that's one timeline there. I'm sure there's a lot of other cool stuff that happened in between there. But if you're just focusing on just the one side, like, then you're missing out, on a lot. And your life is just like passing you by if you always think that every year is a struggle. No. And that, you're hoping for a better year next year. Well, yeah, I hope we don't have a pandemic next year. And I hope, more people get along and stuff like that. But it starts with our own thinking and changing how we're viewing things. Because if we're always viewing things black and white cookie, and never in the gray, then I think each year we're just going to keep repeating the same karma, right? Until we get it, until we fully integrate it in. So anyway, those are my top 10 list for why I think 2021 was a transformative year, whether you agree with me or not. But I think if you're listening to this, you can probably relate. If you listen to this till the end, you could probably relate to some of the things I mentioned and how this year has really been about this internal progression. And I'm not going to use like awakened versus non-awakened, because again, that's holding up the black and white cookie and saying, the unawakened, I don't like when people say that, because it's dumb. Again, it's a label you're putting on it. Everybody is on their own path. Everybody is on their own journey. So the more we can accept and live in this gray kind of area and realize that we can be on this side and this side. In fact, there's no sides. Why don't we just forget it? There's no sides. There's no good. There's no bad. There's no right. There's no wrong. Because at the end of the day, we know everything and we know nothing at the same time, My reality is very different from your reality. I always say that, So how can I be right when somebody else says that they're right? Then we're both right, because we both have our own versions of truth, per se. I don't know. Anyway, but let's hope for a great New Year's, a great 2022 going in. It starts with us. It really does. It starts with us taking care of ourselves, finding clarity, finding meaning, simplifying, taking those digital detoxes if we need to, but really they're not even necessary, because it's all how our relationship to the world and how we respond to things. So just by cutting something out or cutting somebody out, it's not going to be like a magical cure, because the patterns in our lives are just going to repeat ourselves until we actually learn the lesson here, right? So I think this is a test for all of us. And I know you're going to hear people, it's a test, blah, blah, blah. And people say, well, this is a pretty crappy test, but it is, because it's starting this healing process for all of society, for all of the world. And without sounding too corny about it, I really think it is, it's, in a sense, it's like a healing crisis, right? Where things come to the surface. But it's cracking that outer shell of what looks crappy on the surface and getting to what's underneath it, okay? And there is a message underneath it. There is something good underneath it. We just fail to see it many times. But it's getting to, again, this place of like compassion, and us getting to a place of just understanding each other, and that we each have our own lives and our own lessons to learn and our own realities, and and fighting with each other and being angry with each other isn't going to make for a better 2022. And just because it's holiday season, we should always live this way, not just during like December, right? And the beginning of January. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this podcast. I don't know. Hopefully it was good for the end of the year podcast. I have no idea. It's been a while. But this will pretty much do the end of season 2. Okay, so I'll be back for season 3 whenever that will be, hopefully sooner rather than later. But I wish you a wonderful New Year's, wonderful, going into next year. And, if you want any more information about me, you can go on my website, jenpalko.com. I have a YouTube channel, youtube.com/jenpalko, all kinds of videos on self-help, self-cultivation, Chinese medicine, living in alignment to yourself, being your true authentic self as much as you can be. And I have a book, 12-Step Guide for the Self-Help Book Addict, that is out on Amazon, Barnes & Noble. You can find that on my website as well. Other than that, have a great end of the year, and I will see you next year. Peace out. Bye-bye.